Great, thank you. So as I mentioned, our PowerPoint is going to be up on our website. There's no need to take notes this evening. You'll be able to find all the information on the website. So we first wanted to share with you the funding that's coming down to the city of Fremont and to Alameda County. Robert, thank you. So recent legislation is providing an infusion of funds to local governments to help the country's rent and eviction crisis. And as the mayor mentioned, allocations are being made directly to cities with a population over 200,000. So Fremont has gotten a direct allocation from the U.S. Treasury Department of about 7.2 million, which we will begin to roll out on April 1st. Through our Fremont, Keep Fremont Housed program. A second allocation of funding, about 8.5 million, has been reserved for Fremont by the state through SB 91. And as the mayor mentioned, Fremont's program is for residential tenants and landlords only in Fremont. So Alameda County is running their own program. It is called Alameda County Housing Secure. So if you own units in other cities in the county that are not in Fremont or Oakland, or in the unincorporated area, you must apply through the county's application process. The county is allocating Treasury funds like Fremont first, and then will be initiating their SB 91 funding secondly. The city of Oakland is running its own program that is called Keep Oakland Housed, using Treasury funding, and the state is simultaneously running a program in Oakland called Housing is Key. Housing is Key is the name of the SB 91 program being initiated throughout the state. So as you can imagine, there are many areas that do not have 200,000 population. So the state is running the program for those areas, and you'll likely hear the name Housing is Key as they begin to ramp up their marketing effort. Next slide. Thank you. This is our website, which is our access point for information, and will also be the access point for our portal, our application portal. So you might want to make note of this. We already have loaded on our website questions and answers, information about the program, a document checklist that tells tenants what are the documents they need to start gathering to be eligible for the funding. We've not done a lot of marketing on the program yet, but we already have about 1,000 households who have expressed interest in seeking rental assistance when it becomes available. Next slide. So this is a flyer that we have developed that describes basically what the program does and who are eligible for the assistance and some priorities. So the rental assistance funds may be used to pay rent in arrears for up to 12 months and prospective rent in some cases if a family is economically unstable or is likely to become homeless. Rent in arrears must be paid first, and households receiving prospective rent must be recertified every 3 months. And funds can also be used to pay utility bills in arrears. This flyer explaining the program is now up on our website in 5 languages because we recognize that Fremont is a diverse community and you probably have a diverse set of tenants that you work with. So you'll find the flyer in English, Spanish, Chinese, Farsi, and Punjabi. So please go on the website and use the informational flyer, and please share it with your tenants and tell them to get ready to seek rental assistance. We also have on our website, as I mentioned, a checklist of documents that can be used to meet the criteria for making an application. I also wanted to introduce one of our staff members who's here tonight, Ashley Chen, and she's going to be available and working with anyone who speaks Mandarin and may need assistance in the application process. So we do need landlords to be involved and engaged in helping to push the word out to their tenants. And landlords have some documentation that they need to provide, which includes a completed IRS Form W-9, documentation from the landlord for rent owed and for what months, signed by the landlord or your authorized representative. So the tenant needs to submit this as part of the application, and a copy of the lease held by the applicant. And if a lease is not available, then there are some options. A signed attestation by the landlord, a utility bill in the applicant's name, a bank statement showing payments to the landlord, or check stub showing evidence of paid rent. Next slide.
All right, thanks, Suzanne. I'll take over for the next few slides as we talk a little bit more about the details of the program. So to be eligible, renter households need to have at least one or more individuals meet the following requirements. Be a Fremont resident, as the question before, somebody asked about property in Hayward, that property needs to reside in Fremont as well as the tenant. And this is a tenant only portal that apply for this program.
Yeah, the landlord does not need to reside in Fremont, just
right.
just the tenant. Yes.
Just the tenant. You also need to have a household income at or below 80% of the area median income. Either qualify for unemployment, experience the reduction in household income, incurred significant cost, or experience financial hardship due to COVID-19, or on or after March 13th, 2020. You also need to demonstrate a risk of experiencing housing instability or homelessness. This can come in the way of missing your rental payments and receiving a late notice. And we also encourage people that meet this criteria to apply. Applications will be date stamped, and we will attempt to reach as many applications as we can. So with that, while we are expecting a large volume of applicants to apply to our program, we will be establishing a priority to, amongst eligible applicants. Eligible households with the household income at or below 50% of AMI, or who have an individual who has been unemployed for the 90 days prior to the application, will be prioritized, as well as households which are rent burdened by paying 50% of or more of their total income towards rental costs. And part of the application contains a vulnerability index. So it's a brief series of questions designed to help determine if an applicant or someone in their household is at risk of housing instability or homelessness. All these factors will be considered in the prioritization process. Applicants who are approved for funding will be notified and have checks directly sent to their landlords or utility providers. So how to apply? So we have a wonderful application platform that's provided by Bay Area Community Services, also known as BACS, which will be available online. And once that becomes active, you'll find that application button on our website. The platform will streamline electronic submissions, applicant prioritization, and maintain data to meet federal reporting requirements. The platform is also being used by the City of Oakland and City and County of San Francisco. The BACS platform does not allow you to save an uncompleted application and come back to finish it later. This is very important. So to expedite the review of your application, we're encouraging applicants to collect their needed documents before entering the application portal, and to upload documents with the application. If an applicant cannot do this, it's fine to complete the application, but the applicant will then receive an email with a link to allow you to upload your documents later. However, your application will not be reviewed until all documents are uploaded and it is complete. We have staff and a number of nonprofits working with us that can assist tenants who speak multiple languages. For example, if you have tenants who are Afghan and speak Dari, we can match them with an Afghan assister to get the information they need. The same goes for Spanish, Mandarin, and some other languages on our website. All right, so Suzanne and I mentioned the checklist, and here's a quick picture of it. You'll notice that there's a bunch of examples on what kind of documentation we can accept. And this is only a partial list. There might be others, depending on the situation. You'll find this checklist on our website. And the first one is a valid photo identification. That can be a driver's license, state ID, passport, or a matricula document. You do need proof that your need for rental assistance or utility assistance is a result of significant financial expenses, debt, or because of job loss or loss of income directly related to COVID-19. So examples of this could include a layoff letter or documentation of reduced hours and wages, state or federal unemployment insurance letter, pay stubs indicating a decrease of income, significant expenses such as receipts for medical expenses. And then the third item you'll need is the documentation of gross annual 2020 household income, which goes for all members in your household, or gross current household income for the past 60 days prior to the date of application. And we can calculate this a number of ways. One of the easiest is household 2020 tax returns, where we can take your gross income from that. Or we can also extrapolate or project your income from your pay stubs, unemployment statements, Social Security or disability insurance statements. And lastly, if you have any unpaid utility bills, you'll also need a copy of those bills or unpaid utilities. All right, and then there's a section on the bottom for landlords, and this is how you can help. And I think Suzanne touched on this earlier, but with no harm in repeating. Help them with a copy of a lease held with the applicant. Documentation from the landlord for rent owed, like including months and amounts, as well as a IRS form W-9 completed by the landlord that we'll need for tax purposes.
So we're well aware that many of our lower income households may not have easy access to technology. So where landlords have the ability to assist by copying documents, or if you have scanners and can help them scan their documentation to us through the link that they will be getting in the application process, that will really be helpful for a lot of them. We do have, we are willing to take I hate to say this, we're willing to take paper. If people need to have stuff copied, we can do that at our Family Resource Center. They're going to be operating the program, but it's going to be much quicker if we can do it electronically, and if landlords can help their tenants get over that hurdle if they don't have used to things that help them upload their documents. Next slide. So I want to talk just briefly now about the SB 91 program. So the governor signed this legislation into effect at the end of January 21, and it is very much tied to the state's eviction moratorium, which through that legislation was extended until June 30th, 2021. The funds in this program from the state require the landlord to accept 80% of back owed rent, as long as landlords waive 20% of rent owed. And tenants whose landlords do not waive the then the tenants receive only 25% of the rent owed, protecting them from eviction under the state's eviction moratorium, which basically says that tenants are protected from eviction for non-payment of rent through June 30th, so long as they've paid 25% of the rent owed from September 2020 through June 30th, 2021. So this pot of dollars is not as favorable as the Treasury dollars, which we hope to get out the door first, which does allow us to pay up to 100% of rent in arrears. So the state has set aside 8.5 million for Fremont, but the caveat, well, there's several caveats. Next slide. So there's a lot of pressure on the state and also on the cities to begin spending state dollars. The state, there's a lot of need across the state. So if we don't need all of the 8.5 million in state funding, they want to be able to redeploy that someplace else in the state where there perhaps is greater need. And we don't know that yet, because we haven't started to roll out funds and we haven't seen what the demand for rental assistance is. But again, the state is really pushing us to make some decisions very quickly to take their dollars. And the caveat is, once we take any of the state money, their rules apply, including any Treasury dollars that we've not allocated yet. So once we take state money, the rule for any dollars left becomes the 80% for landlords, not the 100% for landlords. And the rules, as it relates to what's required by tenants, who can apply, the priorities are pretty much the same as they are for what we've just outlined regarding the Treasury Department funding. But the big difference is the 80%. Landlords must agree to 80% of rent owed and waive their rights to pursue the remaining 20% of rent in arrears. And we selected to set our program up like this because we were particularly sensitive, I think, to the needs of small landlords who we felt are going to perhaps have a little harder time accepting the 80%, more so than some of our larger, more corporately operated rental properties. So that is our plan, and we have yet to negotiate with the state exactly when we will be accepting their dollars. Slide. So we wanted to provide you, we talked about the other jurisdictions that have rental assistance programs. This is the county website. And again, this will be available to you. They have a soft opening right now. They've not marketed, they have not publicized their program hugely. And they are focusing on small landlords right now. And they're also focusing on folks who are at 50% of median or less. So if you're in any other city besides Fremont and Oakland, you need to apply through this portal for rental units, and also rental units in the unincorporated area. Next slide. So the city of Oakland, as I said, there are two programs going simultaneously there. The City of Oakland program, this is their website, very long name. And the next slide, Robert. This is the county, this is the state website for the Housing is Key program that the state is operating. So they are, I believe, accepting applications. They attempted to start on March 15th, and I think they're slowly beginning to roll out their funding. Next. Again, this is our website for the city of Fremont. And this is a phone number that goes into our Family Resource Center. We also will shortly have on our website phone numbers that people can call who need special language assistance in getting through the process. So please put this into your your computers and keep it handy, and please make sure and provide it to your tenants where you have rent in arrears, and give them a hand in getting through the process. It's you think it would be very easy to give away money, and we really love to have this much money to help our community. The hard part, unfortunately, because it's governmental funding, is the documentation requirements, and that's where the process gets slowed down. So as much as people can collect their documents that they need when they apply and upload them in one smooth operation, the easiest it is to get the information to our assessors and hopefully get checks out to landlords. So that concludes our presentation, and we're happy to take some questions if people have them.
Thanks, Suzanne and Robert, for the presentation. I have a couple of questions. One is the two programs that Fremont have is a little bit unique compared to the other city, because most of the other city they only have one program. Of course, we grateful for having a choice, and the first one actually pay out 100%. Basically, the landlord able to recover. That's even better. However, I guess for landlord to apply, is it does he need to basically saying which one I'm applying, or they go ahead and applying, and then if the Fremont 7.1 million exhausted, and then automatically the application will go into the state program, or he had to make another application for that?
No, you won't have to make another app. You won't have to have the application process will be the same. And we will let people know when we are getting ready to switch over to the state funding. Unfortunately, it's probably not going to be when we've exhausted our Treasury funding, because the state is really pressing us pretty heavily to start spending their dollars. They want their dollars spent. They do not want to give any, in the state of California, they do not want to give any money back to the federal Treasury Department, which is why they're pressing very hard on all of us to begin to use their funding. We're going to try and hold them off for as long as we can, so we can get the 100% reimbursement out to people. But eventually we'll have to switch over to state funding, and we will certainly let people know when that's going to occur.
I see.
And when the new rule applies.
Okay, I think Gary's question is probably partly answered by the slide that you have. Keep Fremont House. That's the website that basically to go through with the application, and so it's not housing is key. That one is for the state program for the whole state, but this one, Keep Fremont House, is actually the one that for us. Yes. I have a second question. Is like you mentioned, if we don't use those funding before a certain time, then of course the leftover capital will probably go back to the state, and we don't want to see that. So actually, New York City, they have a program that roll out this for the state. They have over 2 billion, just like California, about 2 billion, and then they set aside 500 million for right now they're discussing it. I'm not sure they're passing yet, but they're discussing set aside 500 million for small business. So I believe some of the attendants here, they do own small commercial business. And so is it possible, but if the residential side, they didn't exhaust all the money, and instead of the money go back to the state, we can actually set aside some of those leftover funds to help small business that's in financial trouble?
So the money that the state is allocating is also US federal dollars. It's the federal dollars went to jurisdictions over 200,000, and then a big pot went to the state. So that's all federal money that's being overseen with federal guidelines. So I think the chances of trying to shift its purposes would be very difficult, because it's not being really controlled by the state. Even though they have the dollars, it's being controlled by the US Treasury Department. you know, I have to say the American Rescue Plan that the mayor was speaking about, if you have a chance to look at it, it has more rental assistance coming in it. It also has mortgage assistance coming for homeowners. And I'm pretty sure there are dollars there also for businesses as well. So, you know, it's on its way. It's just not here yet, and we don't have a lot of detail about it. But I think some of the support for local businesses will be in that piece of legislation.
Okay. So help is on the way.
We hope.
Thanks. And another question I have is not necessarily for Fremont, but basically based on our personal experiences, is we applying for another city that's another city in East Bay, and it seems to be basically they ask you how many units you have. So I don't know, it's like if you have less than certain amount, like 5 units or something like that, then your application will be probably having some sort of priority. If you have more than that, then you will have a lower priority. Is that the case for Fremont or no?
Well, we've been trying to give marketing priority to small owners. We did a mail out. We have a fairly substantial list of all of our rental units in the city. I think we have about 19,000, about 6,500 are owned by landowners who have 5 or fewer units. We've done a special mail out to those small landlords, trying to give everybody a kind of head start and a heads up. So that's kind of the way we're trying to reach out to you all.
I see. One question by Richard Lee. Can you think about any reason that tenant will not want to participate in the SB 91 program? Can you please explain the requirement in order for landlord to qualify the SB 91 program? Is it first come, first serve, or there's a priority based on certain criteria or either the landlord or tenant side?
Yeah, so our application portal that we're using is tenant based. So the tenant actually has to make the application, hopefully with the assistance of the landlord, but they can just make, you know, directly make an application. I don't know why a tenant would not want to seek rental assistance, because it is really helping them clear their debt basically to their landlords. And eventually our eviction moratoriums will be lifted and people will be asking for that debt to be paid. So I think it's a win-win for both the tenants and the landlords, and we all need to work together to, you know, try to get the money out to benefit everybody in our community.
Yeah, I think it's also our personal experiences too, that some of the tenant that they when you gave them the form, they feel like maybe you asking them for payment, but actually we try to explain to them is actually the money is not coming from you, it's actually coming from the state, and it's actually to help you. So sometimes you have to have that kind of trust. Otherwise, they you know, they feel like, oh, I had to pay, but it's not the case. You had to kind of explain it to them that actually the money is coming from the state.
Yeah.
Any other? Well, it's a long one. From the fund in Alameda County, but I tried to apply for my rental in Union City versus Alameda County website. It only asked me to upload the W-9 form and pull a property tax statement. However, they didn't ask for tenant information and pass rent amount, either lease agreement. They did allow me to submit the application without those info. Hopefully, Fremont Rental Assistance Program is easy answer. Oh, okay. So basically, a kind of basically a little comment also is basically that in some other city it's a little bit more tricky to send in application, and the website probably designed in a rush. So exactly what they ask, sometimes you don't understand, and so that will be probably the. I'm not sure if you have anything to ask to add here.
No, I just, I want to say we call our phone number. Again, we're going to have a number of assisters. So if there's questions or confusion about anything related to our application process, please call us or email us. And we will try to get back to you as quick as we can.
Okay. Okay, let's do the last one. How to calculate income as a 80% or 50% AMI? Will you please give an example? One member household income is 64,000.
Yeah, so our portal actually calculates that for us. So we're using the sort of HUD guidelines right now, and it will tell you, for a family of 2, 3, 4, whatever. So you just tell us how many people are in your household and tell us what your income is. And then the portal will tell you you are below 80% of AMI or you're at 60% of AMI. The system will calculate that.
And there's also a table on our website that has income levels and number of persons, and you can estimate if your eligibility from that too. So 64,000 for a person or a 1-member household is under 80%.
Thanks, Robert. Okay. I didn't hear the answer about is it first come first serve or is it based on priority? It is based on certain criteria, I believe. So yeah, you can add, Robert, you can add something to that.
Yeah, it is based on priority, and the Treasury Department is pretty clear about their interest in reaching our most vulnerable population. As I said, part of this is conceived as a homeless prevention strategy, among other things. And so when eviction moratoriums are lifted, we don't want to see more people on our streets. We don't want to see more people sleeping in RVs, et cetera. So there is a big concern about trying to maintain housing stability for people who are kind of on the